Hello, so today I am going to give a few short warnings regarding work with Lilith and say to you, my audience, that invocation of Lilith is coming tomorrow, but I need to give those warnings before I film the video because a lot of people, including me, had certain experiences with the lady I need to share, and not all experiences with the lady are positive, but it doesn't mean that the lady is malevolent. It simply means that Lilith is a dark force, primordial force, and not everybody is meant to work with her, and not everybody can handle her energy. Now, I am not an elitist. I am really making my work with Lilith public for a reason, and I believe that everybody should have a right to work with her, but few warnings have to be given. Because in my experience, a lot of people came to me over and over with the same symptoms, with the same stories, and I really had certain experiences also, and I need to share those not so pleasant experiences with you. But those not so pleasant experiences me and others have doesn't mean that Lilith is malevolent, and it doesn't mean that you cannot have many beneficial effects from work with Lilith. However, in order to inform the public and to really give the full picture of the being I am working with, I need to share this information too. So, first and foremost, when you work with Lilith, you need to understand that she is indeed a being of the underworld. And as all beings of the underworld, she can be tricky to work with, and there are some safety measures and guidelines in your work with Lilith. First safety measure and guideline is that you should really respect her, and you should really approach her with dignity and intentions which are not related exclusively to sexual gratification. She shouldn't be seen as a sex object, because this is a recipe for failure. Also, it is recommended to call her in a deeply fortified sacred space and in the presence of other spirits, especially when you work with her first few times. Now, she can also be the first spirit you are working with, but please call her in a fortified sacred space in order to avoid some rogue succubus showing up. And this is really important also, because if you get some rogue succubus showing up and presenting herself as Lilith, which happens, you will fuck up. So you really need to be extremely careful to respect all of the safety measures in your first few experiences with Lilith, in your first few rituals with Lilith. Another thing you should really do is you should when you work with her, not be commanding, especially if you are not invoking angels or Samael or some other powerful divinity, because if you really command without any authority in you, it is a recipe for failure. Lilith cannot handle being dominated, and she will strike you in the face and fuck you up. And she can be really caring and motherly, but she also can be really brutal. Another warning I have for people is to not be overly submissive, because if you are overly submissive to her, it is also a recipe for failure. Lilith is extremely vampiric, and if you are overly submissive to her, you will give her too much energy, which will awaken within her vampiric qualities, and it can be a really unpleasant experience for the initiate. So what I am saying is, please don't be overly submissive, and don't observe yourself as a slave, because that's a recipe for a failure. Lilith doesn't like being commanded, but it's not impressive when you try to lick her pussy either in order to get some favors. You need to have a self-respect, and especially if you are submissive just for purpose of some kind of sexual gratification, whatever, she will fuck you up. When I refer to Lilith being offended by you calling her for sexual gratification, I mean the following. You can call her for love spells, for glamour spells, for obtaining a succubus, but you shouldn't observe her as sexual object, only as a sexual object. You can interact with her on many levels, intellectually, sexually, physically, and working with sexual energy is a really important aspect of her mysteries. But if you observe her only as a sex object, that's literally the worst thing you can do, because she will become extremely brutal and you will fuck things up, you will suffer badly, and I don't want to be in your skin if you do that. There is also another warning which I will give you, is that when you work with Lilith a lot, there are two main risks. Actually, three main risks. One risk is that you will, if you work with Lilith a lot, become a magnet for weird individuals. And that can really make your life a really interesting place, and your sexual urges will be revealed in a little bit more dark light. And a lot of people cannot handle their own dark sexual urges, and it kind of creates fuckery in their lives, because they will attribute whatever is awakened by work with Lilith not to be an aspect of them. They will probably see it as some kind of demonic infection. But in reality, when you work with Lilith, the only thing which happens is your dirty urges are awakening. Lilith is not a low-ranking succubus, so she doesn't infest you with desires which are not yours. She is a high-ranking demonic queen, and when you work with her, she will simply reveal to you the aspects of yourself. And really, you should examine those aspects as an adult, as a responsible human being, and behave according to them, and don't use those urges to abuse people, rape them and shit. Another thing I have in mind to give as a warning is, if you give Lilith too much of your sexual energy, it doesn't matter are you male or female, you can be overwhelmed with her essence. Now, if you become overwhelmed with her essence too much, too quickly, one of three things happen. You either become spiritually reborn, physically really ill, or you die physically. So if you really want to be overwhelmed with her essence and energy, you need to ask her first, what will be the consequences? Does she want that? Is it something you should do? Because not everybody's aura and system can handle to be overwhelmed by her energy. And her energy current is really specific. We need to talk a little bit right now about history, okay? Shortly. Lilith originates in a proto-Semitic religion. Lilith and figures associated with Lilith and class of demons known as Lilith exists in all of the Semitic and proto-Semitic pantheons. similar figure exists in Arabic pantheon, Nabatean pantheon, Mesopotamian pantheon, Akkadian pantheon, Assyrian pantheon. All of them have Lilith-like figures, which have the same attributes, similar name, and similar behavior. So some people say she originates in Assyria, some people say she originates in Babylonia, some people say she originates in Sumeria, some people say that it's actually Arabic concept of Karina, which is adopted into Judaism. There are many theories there, but whenever we look at Lilith figure, there is a connection to Semitic peoples, Semitic mythology, and different Semitic groups which existed in history. Now, modern Lilith we work with is, in form we know, revealed in Kabbalah, in Zohar, in Alphabet of Ben Sira, in parts of the Old Testament, in Mishnah, in Midrash, in Talmud, in that Judaic literature. Okay. But whenever we look at Lilith-like figure in Semitic cultures, it always has the same attributes. It is always connected to sexuality, sensuality, extreme amounts of wisdom, illness, transgression, liberation, darkness, mastery over night, mastery of darker faculties of the self, soul travel, vampirism, seduction, dreams, and few other characteristics. In Proto-Semitic pantheons, all of the similar Lilith-like figures have the same powers, the same attributes, the same type of behavior. Now, I am not saying that all of those similar beings are Lilith. Actually, I know that Karina from Arabic and Lilith from Hebrew lore are not the same. They are separate beings. But what I am saying is that Lilith has motherly side. We as a modern occultists tap into usually, and gentle seductress side. But there are much more darker aspects and forms of Lilith. And if you give her too much energy and become overwhelmed with her essence, some of those darker and primordial forms of Lilith can come to the surface. And you need to be prepared for that. So before you give her a lot of energy and engage in that alchemical process, you kinda need to have a decent working relationship with her, and you kinda need to know what you are doing. Don't give her too much energy straight on. Don't become overwhelmed with her essence for the purpose of transformation right on, because if you do, it will have serious consequences for you. You need to be prepared. I suggest working with Lilith every day. Not every day, but once a week, a few times a week, 2 or 3 times a week for 3 or 4 months before deciding should you work with her really seriously for the purpose of alchemy and transformation. Now, why I am saying that? If you tap into too much of her energy too quickly, especially if you invoke, what will happen is, since Lilith specifically has a certain energy form, energy current attributed to herself, known as the winds of plague. I talked about winds of plague in other videos of mine. It is a really important aspect of my practice. But to keep it short, the winds of plague are technically the currents of energy which show all of the weaknesses of your immune system spiritually and physically and make you temporarily kinda ill. So if you invoke her every day without decent preparation, what can happen? And if you either evoke her every day intensely without decent preparation, okay? I'm not talking about slight evocation like few chantings and shit, or slight invocation like few repetitions. I'm talking about serious rituals, okay? Like, I'm talking about when you tap into her seriously to the point that you have minor aspects of poltergeist activity, intense dreams, and shit like that. Okay? So, if you intensely tap into her seriously every day without giving yourself time to adapt to her energy, what will happen is your spiritual immune system will definitely have severe reaction to the winds of plague current. That will result in you either becoming physically ill or having intense visions which are difficult to handle, or being attracted and vampirized but by some of her subordinates really intensely. And that's not a pleasant experience. Now, there are certain steps for preparation to serious work with her. Now, she should be called, if you really want to prepare for this, if you really want to do serious work with her. So I am giving this word of caution, so smallest amount of people can fuck up. You should really start with some aspect of Lilith which is not seductress and succubus. So I am giving a word of warning to my audience. Don't use traditional demonic hand to call Lilith. Traditional demonic hand which is used for calling Lilith is Rei Via Savage Lilith Lirash. Please don't use that in the beginning, because that aspect of her which stands behind the N is really a succubus aspect of her, and this aspect of her can be really dangerous. In majority of cases it isn't, but mother aspect in my opinion is much safer. So my advice is to use the chant on the screen to call her mother aspect and to start working with that. And call her for a first few months only twice a week. Every Monday and every Saturday. Those are the days of the week in which her presence is stronger. And use either Sunday night and Monday night, because they are both astrologically part of the Monday, and Friday night and Saturday night, because they are astrologically both part of the Saturday. And work with her during the days I mentioned, in the hours of Mars and Saturn. Night hours are better than day hours because her essence is stronger during the night than during the day. Work with her in those days and hours. If you can, organize yourself twice a week. If you cannot organize yourself on those days and hours, that's fine. But I am giving you the best dates so you can have the best experience. Work with her 2 times a week. And really call her to prepare for this serious working and path working. After month or 2 months or 3 months. When you pass all of the introductory kind of tests from her, which won't be really difficult, when you pass all of those little tests and when you attune a little bit to her energy, then serious transformation starts. She will come to you every single night once you agree to this transformation, and she will vampirize you. And then she will, after you pass those 3 months introductory period, come to you every night and vampirize you and give you her energy instead of the vampirized energy. So she will take your energy from you and give her energy into you. So she will literally change your spiritual body to attune to her. That will make you more able to work with her and extreme forms of her current. Once this process is completed, after a month or so, by the way, those nightly visitations by her will be extremely painful and challenging, but she will always attune them so you can survive them. She isn't purposefully trying to kill you. Once you pass that 3 months, twice a week introductory period, she will kind of consider you one of her serious associates and her serious partners, her serious, not necessarily followers, but students, okay? And that's period of her visiting you during the night and eating your energy and then giving you her energy instead of the energy she devoured will last for about from a month to month and a half. Now, after that is completed, then you should really pursue ritualized personal initiation with her if you really wanna, and you will also probably be either required or advised to experience some kind of a ritual adoption, death and rebirth right with her. So you will literally kind of call her and say, look, I want you to adopt me as one of your serious disciples, students, sons, whatever you want to call it. And I will explain what it means, okay? Once you do that, Lilith becomes your spiritual mother, and I will explain what it means. It doesn't mean that you become special. It doesn't mean that you become better than everybody else. It doesn't mean that you even become closer to Lilith than everybody else. What it simply means is that you proclaim, look, Lilith, I want to change myself spiritually and change my energy so I can will your mysteries accordingly. That's what you proclaim when you ask her to adopt you. She will probably agrees when you pass what I previously mentioned. But here is the thing. When you ask her to be your spiritual mother, what it means that you want her to give birth to your new empowered spiritual form. What disgusts me literally is that many people use this alchemical symbolism, which is spiritual and philosophical, to measure their egos and to kind of prove everyone how they are better than everybody else and how they are somehow special and the rest of the world is somehow inferior to them. Now, once you agree to become adopted by Lilith in this ritual, alchemical, philosophical way, what will happen is you will have a test of sorts, in which Lilith will reveal to you a controversial aspect of her mysteries, which will vary on a person. I was given a specific controversial ritual I should use and perform. And that controversial ritual empowered me greatly. That's the reason why you see this channel. That's the reason I am grown in power. Everybody who pursues this form of initiation I described and passes the initial periods and works with her with respect can also receive extremely controversial and powerful aspects of her gnosis. It is not something which is reserved for me. It is something everybody can do. She will give you that controversial gnosis. Which controversial gnosis and extremely powerful shit you will receive is something which is individual. So everybody will receive something they can use and utilize. But that won't be something you find in popular black magical books. That will be something which will probably disgust you at first, but later on, if you really go beyond the limits of shame and start practicing it, you will actually find out that not only that ritual is necessary for the world in general, but it is also really empowering for you. Now, what I advise to people who come to this point is to not reveal that ritual to anybody else, and to not reveal to the public that they do this ritual, and to not involve anybody into channeling the aspect of that ritual or work with them in the aspect of that ritual. Because when you receive that ritual, majority of people will either try to kill them because they do it or judge them because they do it. The judgment and hatred will 10 out of 10 times be hypocritical. As judgment, as we know, it always is in majority of cases. But it will happen. When you tell people what Lilith told you, they will judge you. Okay? If you give them that ritual. So don't give that ritual to anybody else until you master it completely. Until you really can use it and handle it. Keep it for yourself. For the sake of your safety and for the sake of your nerves. Once I truly master the ritual I received, I am obligated by the pact I signed to share it with the public. So don't worry, I won't be a dick which keeps really powerful shit just for himself. You will get extremely powerful ritual I received in a few years. But right now, I didn't master my own ritual I received from her to the point I can give it to the public. But I made the mistake of telling it to a few people, and they didn't understood it in a way it should be understood, and I had really big problems. I also involved other people in channeling the aspects of that ritual completely unnecessarily, and that also created me many problems. So don't be dumb as I was, because you will simply fuck shit up. It won't help. Also, that ritual will give you extreme amounts of power, extremely quickly, especially if you repeat it. So you need to be really careful how you use it, and you also need to be really careful to not become ego-driven and egotistical due to enormous amount of power you will receive in extremely short period of time. I almost fell into that trap, and I harmed many people. unintentionally. It was extremely disgusting on my part, and I will regret it until the day I die. But what is done is done. I am not right now doing everything I can to undo what I did. So also be careful to not become ego driven and fall into ego trap. Now, since you came to this point in which you received the ritual, there is another next step after the ritual. But you need to keep in mind that once you receive that ritual, by receiving the ritual, you have an informal pact with her which doesn't have to be formed. You literally become one of her. How can I say this without sounding like an edgelord? You become one of her extensions. You become infused with her energy to the point that you become extension of her essence, partially. Which means that you cannot stop working with her when you want and how you want. Completely. You will always be connected to her in a way. Even if you summon all of the hosts of pagan pantheons, etc., etc., to slaughter her and banish her, no matter what you do, at the point of receiving your own version of controversial right, you become connected to her in a way which cannot be cut. And that form of a connection is stronger than usual pact people make. But that form of a connection can be achieved by absolutely everybody who is willing to work and dedicate yourself to this really dangerous and controversial spiritual path. Now, there is also one other thing you can do, and that's to make this easier. You can create a sigil with her of your own spiritual form you want to build up, and then feed that form with your own blood and the essence of Lilith. This will make handling the winds of plague much easier and handling her energy much easier. But this will also irreversibly transform your spiritual bodies. So keep this in mind if you try this form of transformation. With the sigil, of course. So, once you receive your right and become connected with her in this manner, there is next step, which is you will start working with her on her macrocosmic agenda. You have right to refuse this. But if you refuse to work with her on her macrocosmic agenda, she kinda won't be as willing to give you another controversial aspects of her mysteries. So it will be kinda of equal exchange. You do things for her macrocosmic agenda, and she gives you really dark and powerful stuff from her arsenal. So that's the exchange. But once you start working on that agenda, you kinda start losing aspects of your humanity in a way, and you also cannot stop doing it whenever you wanna. You can slow it down, you can put it aside, but never stop completely, because you experience in this manner irreversible transformation. So, for all of the warnings I gave, and steps I gave here, you need to be mindful. Don't see her as a sexual object. Don't start working with the succubus aspect. Attune to her energy gradually. Be prepared, if you want to work with her seriously, to withstand vampiric transformation, which is extremely painful. And you need to be willing to go beyond the limits of shame in order to work with her. She won't ask you to commit a genocide or slaughter millions of people, but she will, at multiple points in your serious transformation, demand of you to do something you deem disgusting, which is actually extremely beneficial for you. In many cases, your disgust is a mechanism put in place to keep you away from empowering things you need to do. So keep this in mind too when you work with Lilith. This is really important. And thanks for watching. I gave a bunch of information here. And this will, I hope, be useful guide for many individuals on the path of Lilith. And you need to understand that working with her doesn't make you special. Lilith wants to be mother of entire humanity and not just you. So you should be looking at fellow human beings with a little bit more empathy if you work with Lilith. Elitism and unnecessarily magical dick measuring is not useful on her path, in my opinion. Peace out.